Last week, the Archdiocese in House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's district of San Francisco announced that she is not permitted to receive Holy Communion. The ban comes due to her support of legal abortion. On Tuesday, the Speaker of the House made her first comments on the ban. NTD's Jason Blair brings us the story.
The news of Nancy Pelosi being barred from receiving Holy Communion in San Francisco made headlines last week. The Speaker of the House, who has described herself as a devout Catholic, made her first public response to the ban on MSNBC's Morning Joe on Tuesday morning. She said she comes from a largely pro-life Catholic family.
So I respect people's views about that, but I don't respect us foisting it onto others. Now,
Pelosi also said that this is more than just about abortion, saying these same people are against contraception, family planning, in vitro fertilization. It's a blanket thing, and they use abortion as the front man for it. Last week, Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone publicly announced in a letter that Pelosi is not allowed to receive Holy Communion in San Francisco unless she repudiates her abortion stance. Cordileone told EWTN that he started to become more concerned when Pelosi became aggressively outspoken in support of writing Roe v. Wade into federal law.
Ever since then, I have made several attempts to speak with her, and I've either been denied or have just received no response.
The Archbishop has also been outspoken in the past against President Joe Biden receiving communion, also because of Biden's stance on abortion. Jason Blair, NTD News, San Francisco.
Several major California school districts are shrinking. As administrators search for a solution, more students and teachers are leaving the school districts. NTD's Cynthia Kai spoke to one professor who believes the current education system needs a fundamental change, with a return to teaching morals and the country's founding principles.
Large California school districts like Los Angeles and Capistrano are on the decline. Students and families are leaving the areas, and administrators are scrambling for ways to secure funding. But Pete Peterson from Pepperdine University says the trends, which he thinks are leading to the decline, are not new.
Well, I think just pointing to the growth of the homeschool movement, this has been a movement that has been burgeoning for years.
Since 2020, California has seen a growing number of parent advocacy groups voicing their discontent with the education system. An increasing number of parents are participating in school board recalls. They're also rallying against mandates for vaccines and masks, as well as critical race theory. Was COVID the tipping point, or was this a slow, sort of cumulative change that's been happening over the years?
No, it's a great question. I think it is a tipping point. But I guess two things can be true, right? I think these have been some trend lines that have been moving over the last few years. But COVID did several things. First and foremost, just to look at the lockdowns, it demonstrated the power of school districts over the lives of kids.
Pandemic lockdowns and mandates pushed California students into online learning, while some schools in other states remained open.
They saw really for the first time what was being taught in their schools. And so both this exasperation with the policymakers in school districts around the closing of schools that many have thought then and is now being proven, especially at the elementary school level, those closures were unnecessary and did not produce visibly greater health results.
And many parents are not happy with the new content being taught to their children.
But also the ideological nature being revealed because parents were able to sit in the back of a room or in the kitchen next to a living room and hear what was being taught, gave them this new appreciation and shock over what was happening.
In January 2021, the San Francisco School Board voted to rename 44 schools that are named after historical figures, including former presidents George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. The board reversed its decision 3 months later. Peterson described a similar situation targeting his alma mater, George Washington University.
Of course, the attack from the other side comes, well, that means you don't want to talk about their foibles or missteps. That, of course, is not what we're saying at all. But we should not be naive to the reality that if we take down the founders, it's very possible that we take down many of the things that they stood for.
He said one of the goals of a new institute at his university is to preserve the country's founding principles and prepare students as leaders with a moral sense.
That this moral sense, which is essentially understanding human nature as it pertains to public policy, is so important. And of course, one of those moral sense elements is the importance of faith in the formation of moral, ethical leaders, and in the American experience, in the creation of public policy that aligns with principles of religious liberty.
Peterson believes it starts with teaching students early American history and founding. He wants to teach the intent of the founding fathers.
They wanted to create a republic in which freedom and liberty and the opportunity to practice and inculcate the civic virtues of courage, temperance, forbearance, that this would be a place, this would be a nation in which these would not be forced upon you, but that there would be a celebration and a promotion of civil society, particularly religious institutions.
He said his students at the School of Public Policy are introduced to a more community-based approach to national politics and policy.
This was not kind of a single movement, that these debates and discussions have occurred over the centuries through the civil rights movements of the 1950s and 60s. These very much are very present discussions today, but they all originate. Many of those early discussions really do resonate with the debates and discussions that we're having today.
Peterson said more parents now know what is being taught in their kids' classrooms. He anticipates more civil engagement and people getting involved in local elections to voice their concerns with the direction current policies are headed. Cynthia Kai, NTD News, California.
A new social media bill is making its way through California's legislature, but it's not in support of the companies. It would hold the tech companies liable for their products, especially the addictive nature of them. Lawmakers say it's to prevent kids from the harms caused by social media addiction. Here's more from NTD's David Lam.
Social media helps people stay connected. On the other hand, it can also cause harm to people if it's obsessive. Now, recently, lawmakers in California came together to take a step in facing this issue affecting children. California could soon hold social media companies responsible for harming children who have become addicted to their apps. The bill targets addictive algorithms written into the apps rather than addictive content.
Members, we have a youth mental health crisis on our hands. Instagram made findings, and I'm quoting their own findings. We make body image issues worse for 1 in 3 teen girls. 13% of teen girls say Instagram makes thoughts of suicide worse.
Assembly Bill 2408, known as the Social Media Platform Duty to Children Act, will allow parents to sue social media platforms if their children become addicted to their apps. Parents could sue platforms like Instagram and TikTok for up to $25,000 per violation. Assembly members Republican Jordan Cunningham and Democrat Buffy Wicks introduced it in February.
And many of these kids believe they can't live with social media companies and they can't live without it. And we have to do everything we can as parents. That is what we are. We are parents. Our number one job as lawmakers is to keep our communities safe.
The bill defines addiction as kids under 18 who are both harmed physically, mentally, emotionally, developmentally, or materially, and who want to stop or reduce time spent on social media, but they can't because they are preoccupied or obsessed with it.
You know, everyone is welcome to innovate. They need to innovate with responsibility. They need to innovate with products and services that are not designed to harm our kids.
Cunningham said the bill does not regulate content, but rather features that programmers put into the new products. These features include programming designed to hook kids on the app.
And 6% of American teen users trace the desire to kill themselves to Instagram. 6%! This addiction is fueled by algorithms that run in the background of the apps that they use.
He said other companies are liable for the safety of their products, such as producing stuffed toy animals or bicycle helmets.
We haven't done that for social media yet, for two reasons I can think of. One, is it's relatively new. Second, is that we didn't know what they were doing on the back end to design these algorithms to hook our kids on their product. And we didn't know the harm that was coming from that. But it's real and it's significant.
Several business groups, such as TechNet, a bipartisan network of tech CEOs, said if the bill passes, social media companies and online web services would have no choice but to cease operations for kids under 18 and would implement stringent age verification in order to ensure that adolescents did not use their sites. If the bill becomes law, it would take effect on January 1st next year. Companies that remove features deemed addictive to children by April 1st or conduct regular audits on these features would not be responsible for damages.
The potential impacts of social media, particularly on young people, particularly on young women and girls, are profound. And that's what we're hearing from medical experts.
On Monday, May 23rd, the bill passed on the Assembly floor in a 51-0 vote. 27 votes were not received. The bill is on the way through the legislature, where it could undergo weeks of hearings and negotiations. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
As California's drought drags on, the hotter summer months are threatening to dry up not only water, but also the state budget and the governor's patience. He's now threatening to impose mandatory water restrictions if residents don't use less water on their own.
During a meeting with representatives from the state's major water agencies, Governor Gavin Newsom warned on Monday the possibility of more water restrictions. Newsom said in a statement, every water agency across the state needs to take more aggressive actions to communicate about the drought emergency and implement conservation measures. Up until now, the governor has avoided using sweeping mandatory water restrictions. Instead, he has been giving local water agencies power to set their own rules for water use in the cities and towns they supply. But Newsom's office said if conservation doesn't improve, he could impose mandatory restrictions, but he didn't specify how soon. Last week, while touring a water recycling plant in Los Angeles County, Newsom said he is including $100 million in his budget for drought messaging. The State Water Board has imposed some statewide restrictions. Some include banning people from watering their lawns 48 hours after rainstorms and sprinklers from running onto sidewalks. People can be fined $500 per day for violations. California is in its third year of drought, and virtually all areas of the state are classified as either in severe or extreme drought. January through March is typically when California receives most of its rain and snowfalls. But this year, those months were reportedly the driest in at least a century. Despite calls for conservation, the state's water use went up dramatically in March, 19% compared to the same month in 2020.